This is Dan Ozzie, author of the best-selling, beloved, perfect rock book Sellout, and you are listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
And we are back with a brand new episode. And tonight on the show, Andrew Lowe. You know him from the Jazz June. You know him from his new band, Post Skeleton. You know it all. And we are going to talk to him tonight. And I'm very excited about it, Tommy. The Jazz June are like classic. And I've been catching up on Andrew's new band, Post Skeleton. I'm really digging them. I'm looking forward to hearing the new single, which should be coming out this week.
I love, this is my thing. I've loved Jazz June since I was 15 years old. This has been one of those bands that, and I think it got mentioned on the Anthony episode. Everything we kind of did in terms of like thinking about the way to write harmonies, we stole directly from them 100%.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like the record that we both like really got influenced by was They Love Those Who Make the Music. And it came out on Workshop in like 96 or 97. And we went nuts for it because it was like the correct mix to at least us at the time of heavy kind of like rock styling stuff, but also that kind of braid, promise ring kind of emo. But what they did a lot of was these high picking parts. So it was a lot of like hammer on and pull offs. And we constantly did that. And the audience of one song that people constantly will go back to often is Say Ocean. And that 100% is a Jazz June ripoff.
Well, I think Andrew will be happy to hear that. I wasn't as familiar with them back in the day. The Medicine is the one I've heard, and I caught up on them. The Medicine, I love. I really like the reunion LP they did in 2014 after the earthquake. Great band. I'm really looking forward to talking to Andrew.
Well, this is the other thing. So I have a weird connection to this band in that they went to Kutztown with my sister.
Wait, what do you mean with your sister?
So I don't know if it exactly is. I think one of the former members of Jazz June was friendly with my sister. So my sister went to Kutztown in 1995. And I think I've told the story on the show, but she took me to a hardcore show with a band called Atari. Not Atari Teenage Riot, not the Ataris, just Atari X. And yes. Two of the brothers that were in this band were Brett Bartow and Nate Bartow. I believe Nate was in Jazz June for a period of time, or one of their people that was in Atari was also in Jazz June. There was some type of crossover between the two bands, and that was huge for me because when Anthony and I, well, we'll get into this story during the interview, but when Anthony and I booked them, we were like 15, 16 years old. We didn't know we had to pay them.
Okay. Now, folks, remember to support us, The New Scene. We need Apple Podcast and Spotify reviews. And the reviews are coming in. Tommy, we are up to 66 Apple Podcast reviews. And we've got a couple new ones. We'll read those in segment 3. And we are up to 52 Spotify reviews. We want to get up to 100 for both. So I'm going to keep asking until you get us there. Thank you, everybody who is submitting reviews. Keep them coming. And another reminder, we've got the New Scene, Life is Music is Life, long sleeve shirt, available at the Death Wish Inc. store. Head to the Death Wish Inc. store. Search The New Scene. The shirt will pop right up. Buy it, wear it, take a picture of yourself in it and send it to us. We'll post it on our Instagram story. You want it. You need it. You want it. What do you think, Tommy?
Shout out to Mike Shaw for buying it on like the first day it was available.
There you go. Thank you, Mike. He is a great supporter of the show. Now, some Iodine recordings news. Now, folks, I hope you know by now, our podcast is sponsored by Iodine Recordings. And Tommy, they've got a new band, a new release coming out. The band is Attempt Survivors. This is members of Helmet and Seisha. It's very good post-hardcore style jams. They've got a new single which has premiered over at New Noise magazine. Go and check it out. You want to hear this? It's a great band. And Tommy, when I posted about them, they responded and said they are fans of our podcast. So you know they've got to be cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I loved Helmet and Seisha growing up, so that's huge.
So welcome, Attempt Survivors, to the Iodine Recordings family. It is great to be here with you, and we're looking forward to hearing more. So yeah, folks, check out the song at New Noise magazine. It's great. Now, folks, you really should check out North End, a post-rock band out of Philadelphia. You may be familiar with them. They did a split with our friends in Signal Hill, which came out, I think, last year, 2 years ago, somewhere around then. Wow. I have really been craving new, good post-rock. I haven't been keeping up with it. And this EP, they have an EP coming out. It's called Halted. It comes out March 31st. I got to hear in advance of the whole thing. Whoa. This is really, really good stuff. I would go as far as to say this may be my favorite post-rock release of 2022. It's like mathy, jammy, slightly heavy, good post-rock. Can't recommend it enough. Check out North End.
The first thing I said to you after you sent it to me was, this is my favorite thing you've sent me in a very long time. It's amazing. And on top of that, like when I heard it, I was like, this is when I make music by myself. This is what I hope it ends up sounding like. Like it's that type of like, I felt a very personal connection to it.
Yeah, as soon as I heard this, Tommy, I was like, Tommy is going to love this. This just has that very specific Tommy sound where I know he's going to absolutely love it.
They do. It's like they have the same type of sensibilities in terms of like they understand guitar work as almost like the metallic kind of idea of like we need to harmonize this section because this is the part where it leads into the next part where it gets heavier. But they do a great job of doing that without distortion or minimal distortion. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there's slightly heavier parts, but it's not too much. It's very pleasant, very awesome music. So check out Halted, the new EP, which comes out March 31st. Okay, so that's it for this segment. Check back in with us at segment 3. But right now, we are going to speak to Andrew Lowe. Enjoy. All right, folks, we're here now with Andrew Lowe. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Oh, man. Thanks so much. I've been looking forward to this. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. You know, we're excited to talk about the Jazz June. We're excited to talk about your new band, Post Skeleton. But first, I am excited to hear, Andrew, how are you doing today?
Today, you know what? I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, so I knew you were going to ask me this question. And I would say today I feel like I'm levitating above my life. Like I'm not really, it's just one of those days of like reflection, you know what I mean? Where you're kind of looking down on your life and everything and really doing a lot of contemplating. Not quite an existential tailspin because it's not a bad thing, but yeah, levitating over myself and looking down and just scoping things out.
I love that. I do that a lot. But what kicked this off, Andrew? Anything in particular, or is it just one of those days?
Yeah, just one of those days. Yeah, nothing in particular, really. Just general life stuff. I mean, I've got 2 little kids, so there's always something on the go with them. But yeah, just work's busy, that kind of thing. And but yeah, generally things are good.
How old are your kids?
7 and 4.
Oh man, so you're busy all the time.
Yeah.
Andrew, I have twin 8-year-olds and a 2-year-old. So
twins. Fuck. Yeah, man. I feel for you. Double the fun, I guess, but also double the work. And you've got a younger one too?
Yeah, so we have twin 8-year-olds and a 2-year-old, and everybody's awesome. However, it is chaos here all the time.
Yeah. You know what? One of my favorite episodes of yours is the one with your wife or partner. That was so good. And you know what? Like because I went to, I mean, we'll talk about this obviously, but I went to Kutztown and I've been around Pennsylvania, and like you and her accent is such a like sweet reminder of like Kutztown and like, you know, Bam Margera and just like that whole sort of like, I don't know, not that you sound like him, but it's like it's taking little sips of nice red wine when I hear Pennsylvania accents like that.
It's just, yeah, it's a nice gulp of nostalgia, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kelly is going to be so happy to hear that, because we were just all together at a function
Yes.
and we would, we're talking about the podcast with people, and she was like, I was on it. And she's like, my episode was one of the best. And I'm like, yes, it was. I love that.
And of course, when, after, I absolutely loved Mayor of Easttown. So yeah, just like that whole sort of part of the world I have a lot of love for.
Yeah, and I actually don't hear my accent until I listen to the show, and then I'll play it in the car, like, because it comes up on like Spotify or something, and I'll listen to it and I'll go, oh my God, that's what I sound like? Oh boy.
I was going to say, in the car, are you listening to your AM, FM radio?
No, my radio.
Are you going home or are you going home?
I was going to say, it's the same way I listen at home, which is on I listen on my phone. And it's really hilarious though, because like Keith and I started this whole thing talking about like we have these things that we say when we talk to each other. Be like, yo, remember that dude? And everybody else is like, do you mean remember that person? I'm like, yeah, that's what I said. And they're like, no, you said, remember that dude? And I'm like, oh yeah. Remember them guys that used to come to the con? Like, oh Jesus, that is really, we don't speak the language as much as we chew it up and spit it out.
Yeah, well, I'm from New Jersey, so I can't really talk. I mean, that's pretty much the worst kind of accent you can have. So no, I love it. But you know what, too? I know you're a skateboarder. I don't know how long you've been skating for, but I was like texting my friends from Atari, being like, "What was that place we used to go up to that Kerry Getz used to skate? I need to talk to these guys about it." Penn Skate and like all the other places, random places around Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I have. Do you remember the Bartow brothers from Emmaus?
Dude. I was in a band with Brett and with Brett. We were in a band, the straight edge hardcore band called Atari.
Okay. So
tell them, Tommy.
Yeah. So that was the first. So my sister went to Kutztown, and my mother, in a stroke of genius, allowed me to go and visit my sister because I missed her so bad, to go visit her up in Kutztown. And my sister's idea of taking care of me was, I'm going to take you to a hardcore show. So I got to see Atari in Kutztown when I was in I think I was 11 or 12. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Where was it? Do you remember? Was it in a house show or?
No, it was at looked like kind of like a youth center kind of place.
Oh, I think I remember that because I think Jazz June might have played as well, maybe. Because I remember we used to do double bills back to back, and that killed me because I'd be singing and playing guitar in the Jazz Dude, and then I'd have to do these high kicks and jump around and sort of Atari crap. It's funny because me and Brian from the Jazz Dude are both in Atari, and we tried to quit so many times, but they wouldn't let us. I'm glad they didn't, but we were just too cool for a while. You know what I mean?
I have when this is over, I have a picture upstairs of it. It might be Brian or it might be Brett. It's a handrail in Kutztown, and on the back it says Brett or Brian, and I remember it says "Jackass to handrail," and it's someone doing a frontside nose slide on this rail is short. It's like 5 stairs or 4 stairs. It's really small. But my sister had it. My sister had a photography class, took a picture of it and printed it out for me. And I had it from the time I was, 12 or 13 up until I still have it to today. And I'll be 40 next month. It was just one of those things that kind of, it made sense to me as skateboarding, hardcore, all of this stuff was kind of intertwined of this is our thing. This is fun. And it's all about just, being friends with other people.
Tommy, that Atari show, was that your first like punk hardcore show?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's a pretty crazy time is a flat circle thing that you saw that show and now we're here with Andrew talking to him, don't you think?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's a very, I always think about this, like that time in my life was very influential in the music I chose to listen to, and more importantly, the things I chose to keep that were important to me, the friends I had, the things that I kept in terms of connection wise. And I think a lot of the things that I thought were important at that time are things that I still look back on as like, this makes sense to me now. Like, this is an important thing, and there's a reason it stayed with me for this long.
Yeah, well, basically, you have me to thank for your whole life. Basically, is what you're saying there.
Well, it's actually it's really funny, Andrew. I was actually just bringing this up. So, Keith and I were talking off the air before we started this segment. Anthony from Circus Survive and I booked you. We booked Jazz June to play a show in the Trihampton YMCA in Southampton, just like 20 minutes north of Philly. And we booked you guys and we were like, this is great. We're going to, we have all these great bands. And then you guys were like, yo, how do we get paid? And Anthony and I kind of looked at each other like, oh, we got to go to the door. We got to go to find the door person. And what we found out was they took 100% of the door. So Anthony and I scraped up all the money we had together and paid you guys with like money that we had like in our car. Like I had like a $20 bill in my visor of like, I'm like, oh my God, we got to pay them. Like, it's so bad. Like we can't not like, well, because you guys had traveled so far and it was such a pain in the ass. Like, and you guys, there was some kind of like, you were supposed to go on at a certain time and then another band had gotten put on and that was Anthony's fault. But it was like, we have to pay these dudes. Like they traveled forever to get here. And on top of that, like, they were awesome. The other thing is we stole your sound for a long time. So there was a good chunk of time when we were writing anything and it was like, okay, so what's the other part that we're going to write for this? So like we would write like whatever the rhythm section was. And then our big idea was like, we would go back to like When in Rome. Like that was our like thing. We would be like, okay, so what's the high section? Like what's the part where it's like the hammer on pull off part that kind of ties it all together? And that's how we wrote songs. Like we would write the regular part and go, okay, so what's the other part that kind of like ties these two sections together? And we kept going back to what you guys had written. And yeah, so that's what we did for a long time.
Let's break this down a bit. Andrew, do you remember that show and Tommy not paying you?
No, I don't. And I feel so bad that you went to your car and picked up $20 or whatever. Like, because, obviously we didn't have a lot of money, but, I feel sad that you had to pay us out of your allowance money or whatever. But I appreciate it, though. I'm sure it probably helped us get home.
It was definitely one of those things that like, and you guys played for so long. You played like over an hour, and it was just like, oh my God, these dudes traveled. Like we have to pay them. Like, so we scraped money together. So I appreciate you. I really appreciate you doing that because nobody else. We contacted we contacted like 10 other bands, and nobody else showed up, and you guys did, and we're like, yes. They're here. Oh, wait, they want money. Oh, shit.
Andrew, how does it feel to you that a young Anthony Green and Tommy were ripping off your band, the Jazz June, for Audience of One so many years ago?
Well, I definitely ripped off like so many bands. I mean, it's funny because now when I listen back to like certain Jawbox albums, and I'm like, God, I really just ripped off that entire sort of like song piece by piece. So I can't really fault you guys, but it's flattering. Yeah, I mean, it was such a cool moment in time though for music, because with the Jazz June, we were like ex-hardcore dudes who started to, get into jazz and rock and roll and all sorts of indie rock and everything else. So, yeah, everyone was kind of ripping each other off, I guess, and ripping off different styles from different places. So I don't hold it against you.
Yeah, I mean, I still do it even now when I write. But Andrew, take us back a little bit. Tell us about discovering the scene and some of your trajectory. It sounds like you started off in hardcore, yes?
Yeah, so I started off as like a New Jersey skate rat going to like different hardcore shows when I was probably from the age of like 15. I had some older friends who had cars and stuff, so that was cool. We'd get up and go to like Middlesex County College and John Hiltz's house and also like Josh Grabell's house. I don't know if you guys know about this, but he was the guy who ran Trustkill Records. And he had like a house sort of in our town where his parents, it was like, it wasn't even like that big. He had this basement where his parents just like let him have these big house shows, but his house shows were like Strife with Earth Crisis and Mouthpiece and, you know, like all these insane bills, like these big, huge touring bills would come through and play his basement. So, yeah, I met those guys, and also Carl Severson, who did Ferret Records, and he was in Nora. Those guys were kind of like around sort of like skateboarding days. And yeah, I just got to like go to different shows at their house. And then yeah, John Hiltz, he lived up near like Montclair, and he would have more of like the sort of Gern Blanston bands like Native Nod and Weston and stuff. So, you know, there seemed to be something going on like almost, I don't know, every month or maybe sometimes more. So like I said, because my friends had a car too, we would you know, we would even drive to like DC to see Fugazi and then drive home again, you know, just like crazy stuff when you're sort of like 17 and just have like nothing else to do. So yeah, I kind of got really into straight edge hardcore. I'd be like Xing up at shows and everything. And then I got to Kutztown, and like my first day I was wearing a Falling Forward shirt, and like the guys we were talking about, Natari and Nate and Brett and Chris and some of the other guys were walking by, and they kind of were like, oh, you know, Falling Forward shirt. And then I went to the cafeteria and they were all there, and one of the guys came up and started talking to me. And from then, like, I kind of got introduced to Atari and some of like the hardcore kids at because Atari was going like before I joined it, some of the hardcore kids at the school, and eventually joined the band and started to play with them. And then yeah, just, I mean, it's such a cool school because there was no fraternities or sororities, and most of the kids were art students. So everyone's just kind of chilled out, or there's like a lot of hippies but everyone's just kind of friends. Didn't, you know, there wasn't like, you know, like skaters versus the hippies or anything, which was actually like in my high school. But yeah, getting to Kutztown was really cool because everyone was really cool and friendly, and they were just kind of into the same kind of stuff as me, hardcore and skateboarding. And also I'd go snowboarding like on the weekends. And then at one point I got like a yearly pass, and I scheduled all my classes so that I didn't have classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays just so I could go snowboarding. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for paying all that money for my education. And yeah, so at any rate, then at some point, I think my second year, I basically met all the guys in the Jazz June. One of them just called me and was like, hey, let's get together and play. And yeah, we started playing and started the band. And it was funny though, because the first show we ever played, we were only practicing maybe a couple of weeks, and maybe had like 2 or 3 songs. And there was this big house show at a place called The Cliffs, which was like this sort of student accommodation. It wasn't dorms, but it was just these like student houses, these really shitty student houses. But anyway, they had a house show at one of them. And this other band, Rain on the Parade, played. So Atari played our set, and it was like packed with kids, obviously like free show, nothing else to do in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. And all of a sudden the bassist for Rain on the Parade like was in traffic or couldn't make it on time for his set. So Ronnie from Rain on the Parade was like, hey guys, didn't you start a new band, that new like indie band that you're in? Why don't you guys play a show? And we're like, we've only, we had like 3 songs. And also I hadn't told anyone in Atari that I was playing in another band, like, because I was very new. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. So all of a sudden I just like took off my sweaty t-shirt and put on another one and just started singing and playing in this totally new band. And they're just looking at me like, what the fuck, Andrew? Like, you're in a totally new band and you haven't told us you're playing like this entire set. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been playing with these guys. So yeah, that's kind of how the Jazz June started, just like trial by fire, thrown in at the deep end. So yeah, and so yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like growing up in New Jersey, it was just really cool because, you know, we had like the beach and pretty decent places to skateboard. And, you know, you can go to New York City on the train. It was like not too too far, and my parents would let me go when I was sort of like a young age. But it was funny because I remember I was skating like this curb at like a Kmart or something like that on like a Friday night at like 9 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden this van pulls up, and these guys are like, "Hey, do you know where Josh Grabell's basement is? We're playing a show there." I was like, "Oh yeah, I went there once." It's like, go down there and make a right, and then we're like, "Oh wait, what band are you in?" And they're like Snapcase, and I had never heard of them before, but from then on, I obviously well, I didn't Google them however, I found out about them, and then I was like, "Oh shit, I can't believe like Snapcase just came up to us at a parking lot and asking us for directions." But yeah, it was just a lot of cool stuff going on at again in New Jersey with different house shows and different kids putting on stuff. My friend Tim Morris, who passed away, God rest his soul, he used to put on shows at a place called the Briar Shack, and he would have like Channel and Ripping Corpse and Endeavor and like Frail and just like all these really cool bands that when you look back, you just think like, man, it was just a really lucky time that I was kind of like knew the people that I knew just through like skateboarding stuff to be knowing about these shows, because obviously pre-internet, so it was all just like finding a flyer and be like, oh, next show, finding one flyer at one show and going to the next one and just continuing like that for like years.
Yeah, it's funny. We had Daryl from Snapcase on the show, and I think he mentioned the Josh Gabrell basement shows, which were legendary. The Tim Morris tapes are legendary too. I got inspired seeing those accounts on Instagram and a bunch of others when I decided to start this up.
Yeah, he was awesome, man. He used to go to every single show. He was the guy who would drive us to see Fugazi for the day. He had this huge sort of like, I don't know what it was, like some sort of like old ass Cadillac that we could all fit into. And he would just drive anywhere for any show. And he would always bring his little camcorder, and he just would sit there like in the mosh. He was a really big dude, so he, took a lot to sort of like knock him over. So he would just sit there like in the middle of the mosh pit filming all these bands. I mean, unfortunately the audio isn't great on those, but it is really cool to see some of those gigs, especially like the Josh Grabell ones with like Chorus of Disapproval and like these kind of like cool California bands who are on tour. And yeah, that's a really cool archive that I think his brother started, that they sort of transfer those tapes.
So you play this show as the Jazz June. Now this caught Atari completely by surprise. They had no idea.
Yeah, because I was like, it's funny because like, being in a hardcore band, especially a hardcore straight edge band, the fact that I was like I was in a non-hardcore band was like deception, like, like how dare you not play music at 250 beats per minute, and you know what I mean, like not X up. So I mean they weren't like that, but that was just like the fear that I had, that if I told my straight edge friends I was in a band that wasn't hardcore straight edge, they'd just be like, that's it, we're not friends, we're just gonna like never talk to you again. But also, like I said, it was I didn't know any of the Jazz June guys. Like they all went to school together down in Doylestown. Like they all went to high school together. So I didn't really know them until like the first practice. I kind of met them all. So yeah, it was very new. I just wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, and I had like the sort of hardcore fear in me that so I didn't, but it was actually good because I just sort of like ripped the Band-Aid right off with that sort of like 3-song set that they were at.
So was everything cool with Atari after the set?
You know what? It's funny now because that was a long time ago, but there was like, it wasn't like there was rifts, but there were like a lot of conflicts because Jazz June started playing all the time. Like at one point we had like a booking agent who would book us almost every single weekend, and she was also booking Hot Water Music. So like, they're cool shows that we wanted to play. And so sometimes there were some conflicts, and like also not the guys in the, in Atari, but like some of the early message boards on of like the Lehigh Valley scene would be like, those guys in Jazz June, they're lame, they're not hardcore, they wear sweaters and all this other kind of weird stuff that you'd get on like that sort of like black screen with green font message board, old school. So yeah, there was not exactly the guys in the band, but just like the scene, this sort of like hardcore scene got a little bit of a kickback there.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot more gatekeeping back in the day, for sure. So when did you part ways with Atari and start focusing on Jazz June full time?
I didn't. That was the thing. We just kept both going for a long time, because I remember we even played like a sort of quote unquote reunion show after like I had left Kutztown and the Jazz June had stopped playing. So we were just not playing very often. Like we would just play every once in a while. But then we put out a 7-inch, and we're on a comp. I think I can't remember the name of the comp, but that song did really well, and people started to like us. So sort of like maybe like 3 years into Atari, we started to play like cool, so like hardcore festivals and stuff up in Scranton, and we would play with like Fast Break and Floor Punch and open up for sort of like mid-level hardcore bands and stuff like that. So yeah, we kind of kept them both going for a while, but Jazz June always took precedence because we would like jump into a tour van every spring, winter, summer break and just play shows the entire time, as far out west as we could. So we're definitely doing a lot more than the Atari was.
So, oh yeah, so you're pulling double duty the whole time. Wow, that sounds like the perfect situation. I would love to be in a hardcore band and a great emo band at the same time. That's the dream.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because, we didn't really appreciate it. We saw, Brian and I sort of saw Atari as this like weight around our neck because we were such good friends with the Atari guys, and like we'd always skate with them and hang out with them and live with them and stuff like that. But like they were so still into like hardcore, and especially because it was like that 88 hardcore revival thing with like, again, Fast Break and Floor Punch and Hands Tied. And so they were just like super into it. And we were just like not really that into it anymore. Like if I had been in Atari when I was like 17, 18, it would be like a dream come true. But I was just a little bit sort of over it at that point, and just like a bit snobby about hardcore.
I hear you. Yeah, I went through that too, where I don't know, I'd make a big statement like, I don't listen to this anymore. I only listen to these
Exactly.
indie rock bands, or I only listen to emo now. It's just like, I guess everybody goes through that to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously now I love all of it. Like I listen to everything, and like I still try to keep up with like the current hardcore bands as much as I can. And there's some pretty good ones in London that I've kind of run up against. But yeah, exactly. It's like when I was straight edge and hardcore, it's like I do not listen to anything on a major label. Like fuck you, Jay Massis and Dinosaur Jr. and Sam I Am. Like
Yeah.
And then it was like the opposite. Like I do not listen. I don't care about hardcore. It's boring and lame or whatever. But it is funny too, because the greatest thing is that there were hardcore kids who were like, I remember this kid coming up to me and going like, "Hey, so where's Derek been, my friend?" And I was like, like, what do you mean? He's like, "Oh, he hasn't been at any shows lately." And he was like, "Well, I don't know. He got a job, I guess." And he's like, "I thought he said he was hardcore for life." And I was like, did he, did he say that? Like, did he say that? Or, so there was that kind of thing. But nowadays, or even later on, after, emo kind of blew up and got bigger, and all those like hardcore kids came around, and they would like admit that they loved the Jazz June, even though they'd talk shit about us on message boards. And then they started their own fucking emo band. So it was like, oh, here we go.
So did you find a lot of resistance in the Jazz June? Did you have trouble at the shows, or was it only on message boards that people were talking nonsense?
No, we did get some bad reviews in like some local zines and stuff like that. I think a lot of it was around my singing, unfortunately. I wasn't really a singer. It was like in the Jazz June, we had like our first couple practices, and it was like, okay, so who's going to be the singer? And we're just all standing there with guitars around our necks. And I was like, I guess I could try, but I don't really sing. And then you're like, okay, cool. And then, because no one else wanted to do it. So there was that kind of thing. And then obviously it was like, oh, you're just trying to rip off the Promise Ring, or, it was like, and again, the emo thing was like all immediately a joke, like, oh, you're a fucking emo band, so you suck. So yeah, there was a bit of, it's weird, definitely from like the hardcore punk rock community. And then even within, it was just like, you're just trying to sound like this band because they're popular. And it's like, obviously we just wanted to play music and hang out and have fun and stuff. So it was weird, but you kind of like, once that kind of happens once or twice, you just kind of go, whatever, I don't care. And it doesn't bother you anymore.
So it sounds like things picked up pretty quick. You play this first show. You have Hot Water Music's booking agent. Were you playing a lot of gigs?
I mean, that, to be fair, that was a couple years later, but yeah, it did. I guess you're right. It did kind of happen quickly because what happened was we were like one of the only like emo indie bands, whatever, in the Lehigh Valley. So whenever any band would come through that was of any any sort of like description of that kind of music, they would just put us on. So we'd open for like At the Drive-In, Knapsack, Mineral, like all these different like bigger touring acts, and it helped us like meet people. And like, yeah, Hot Water Music guys were so cool. They would just be like, here's our entire book full of contacts. You can just like photocopy it and book your own US tour, and people were really cool. And the guys from Mid Carson July who were out, where were they from? Sunny, I can't remember that place, somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania. They were really cool because they were a bit older and they would help us out with like booking weekend tours together. And yeah, we just kind of like started meeting people. And again, one show led to the next. We'd play a show and they'd ask us to play another show, or they'd ask us to come back for a bigger show and stuff like that. And then I don't know how we met Eva from the Fata Booking exactly. But yeah, she picked us up, and then it was like, yeah, Hot Water Music and some of her other bands that we could go on like these mini weekend tours with and stuff like that. And bear in mind, we're like in school the whole time. So I'm like going to class on a Friday until 10, going back to the house, loading up the van, booking, getting in the car, driving to fucking like Ohio, and then like playing 3 shows and driving home sometimes overnight and going to class, or like studying on cue cards in the fucking van for a test on Monday morning. So yeah, it was, we were just like squeezing in as many times as much as we could.
That sounds like a pretty fun life. What was your plan? Did you want to do music full time? What were you majoring in college? Where were you at the time?
Well, I started off with a political science major because I thought I was going to be like some sort of vegan, like activist, sort of like changing the world, very idealistic kind of straight edge kid. And then when I got into those courses, like corruption was like taught on the first day. They're like, well, this should happen, but because there's a lot of money and power and, of these big corporations, it doesn't happen. You just kind of have to accept it. And I was like, okay, this is lame. So I ended up taking a bunch of English courses because I was into writing, but I knew I wasn't going to be like a writer or like a novelist or anything. So then I transitioned to like English education and did that, but then I never actually taught. So I have an English education degree, but I never actually taught. I went through my student teaching, but I just wanted to get out of school basically at that point.
But you're in this band now, you're playing these excellent gigs. Did you think, man, this is it, I'm going to do this?
Not until like, because I was a super senior, so I went for 5 years. Maybe the last year when people actually start, I remember like a sort of turning point for that, our kind of music was like, we would always play this festival up in Stroudsburg. It was like a yearly festival, and it was always like hardcore bands. But then they started to have like Get Up Kids play and stuff like that. I remember when Get Up Kids played, and someone going like, they just sold like 90 CDs at the merch table, and I was like, holy shit. So yeah, when those things started to happen, I guess we thought, because also the great thing is that we were all going to school, so we had all the Christmas summer breaks to tour, but then we all actually graduated the same year. So it was like, okay, let's try this out and see if it could happen. And again, we had a booking agent. At that point we're on Initial Records, who had like, good distribution. They were getting us reviews in, alternative press and like bigger sort of like industry mags and stuff, things like that. But no, not until the very end, when we had been together for maybe 4 years, was it even like considered, before that, it's like, it's like, it would be like thinking that Atari was going to be my full-time job. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't ever conceivable that was going to happen. Cause it just wasn't a thing until all of a sudden, some of the bands started to get a bit bigger. And then, but then when it really started to blow up, when like Jimmy Eat World was on the radio and My Chemical Romance, we had pretty much stopped playing and touring at that point, because we'd all left school, and we had this horrendous opening slot for Elliot for like 3 months, and it just absolutely ground us down to the ground. And we just all like hated each other and like didn't want to play music anymore.
Now, talk about this tour. What happened? Why was it grueling?
Okay, so this is not to the fault of any of the people involved. I'm not, but we ended up with a deal where we only made $100 a night max. So if Elliot was making $8,000 a night, we were still making 100. So they were like eating sushi and like going around.
Jeez.
They had like
who negotiated this deal?
Again, I love you, Eva, and I don't actually know exactly what happened. We were given a contract that we agreed to, and then we showed up at the first show, and it had stupid shit on it, like we want hoagies and Budweiser and like, all this like stuff. So we went up to the first venue. I remember it was at Twister's, and we're like, where's our hoagies? Where's our Budweiser? Like, we've got a contract. And the guy was like, I don't have that contract. This is the contract I have that says you get fucking nothing and you're only getting paid $100. And yeah, somehow we had agreed to the tour at like and Elliot had a certain deal in mind that they were offering to like an opening band that we took, but it ended up being different from what we either understood to be the deal or not. So, but it was like 2 months. It wasn't like a week. It was like, and again, we like had just graduated from school. So I had like worked the whole summer, luckily saved up a bunch of cash working at a coffee house. And then, so we had some money, but if not, we would just been like, well, we just would have gone home, I guess, but we were able to like pay for it out of our own pockets for this. But the shows were great. I mean, there was like 200 kids at each show and we did sell a bit of merch, but like some kids would go to the show, buy an Elliot pin and, hoodie and then go home because they were too young to even be out for the show that night. So yeah, we were just on two totally different levels.
Do you hear Elliot nowadays and get like a twitch in your eye, remembering only getting $100 on those shows?
No, because there was these two guys who were so awesome. There's guy Benny and this guy Digger, and they were like super Louisville guys, and they were just like, y'all should just hang out and have fun, and like, yeah, we're not getting paid that money. Like, you don't worry about money, man. We'll give you some money if you need it. So they really like helped us through, and they're really cool. Some of the other guys in Elliot weren't as they weren't mean and awful, but they were just like, what, we've been through this, we went on a tour with so and so and we're only making so much money and our van broke down. So they were kind of like, listen, this is just you paying your fucking dues, so shut up, suburban white kid, and like be happy that you're on tour kind of thing.
Tough love.
Yeah. So
the shows must have been great though. That was prime Elliot though. Was this False Cathedrals?
Yeah,
era?
It was the album. Was it on Revelation? I think it was their first album on Rev. And yeah,
oh, that one, U.S. songs. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was Cathedrals. But at any rate, no, it was cool. I mean, I really liked Elliot. I really loved Falling Forward. And was there an Endpoint connection too? I can't remember. But I really liked the sort of like legacy of those bands. And obviously, we were on a Louisville label, so we knew a lot of those guys. But yeah, definitely loved Elliot and loved getting to see them play every night. And we got to play like, like the outside room at Emo's in Austin, with like bigger bands. Oh, the Melvins, you know what I mean? So it was like a sort of like a little look into some of these cooler, and we played in like San Diego with Jejun, this big packed out show. So yeah, some of them were really cool. But generally, most of the shows were much better attended. Our tours, we'd go from like, New Jersey, next show Chicago, next show like Wisconsin, these mega drives, and there'd be like 4 people at each one, and it'd be in some kid's basement, and he'd be like, if you want to make a donation, here's a pot in the corner of the room, chuck a quarter in, you know what I mean? So it was definitely better. But again, the fact that we were not making much money and just like, it was basically going on gas, and we were eating like peanut butter sandwiches every night. But hey, whatever. I was like 21, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, those memories must be so great. Touring with Elliot, playing with Melvins and Jejun. That's like in a late 90s, early 2000s dream.
Yeah, definitely. And like, again, to see what some of those other, some of those bands went on to do, it's kind of cool. I remember one time, the guy from Saves the Day, before they were like, I think they had just played a few shows, and I remember his email address was like xxxchris.xxx at hotmail or something, and I was like, oh man. And of course I was like, oh, this is some straight edge kid, whatever. But he was like, hey, we're in this band called Saves the Day, and we like the Jazz June, do you want to play? And but yeah, because he was straight edge, I was like, they must suck. So I was like, so we're like,
Oops.
oh, cool, man. I appreciate getting in touch, but we've got. I think I would always just refer them to our booking agent, and obviously, but so that was probably a bad move because obviously they went on to do huge things. I remember we played some random show in like the middle of North Carolina with Jimmy Eat World, and it was like us watching them and them watching us, but then obviously they went on to huge things. So yeah, it was just cool to be there before it all went crazy. Because to be fair, like when we had finished our last Elliott tour, we did actually do another Jazz June album, and we tried to play gigs, but we had also parted ways with our booking agent because of that whole tour, and we could not get a show, man. Like you'd call up Maxwell's or even some of the smaller clubs, and it would just be like, no, if you don't have a manager, just like fuck off. We don't care. So yeah, it got everything kind of went to the next level, and we just kind of like didn't quite get to that place yet.
You had difficulty booking gigs back in the day after you parted ways with your booking manager.
Yeah, because we just didn't have it was just you didn't have an agent, and we were purposely trying to play like New York City shows because like Brian was in Brooklyn, Justin and Dan were down in Philly, I was in New Jersey, so we're like, let's just play a bunch of New York City shows. It's kind of, instead of like jumping in a car every weekend and driving 12 hours to play a basement in like Dayton, Ohio, let's try to play like actual club gigs in New York City, and that became hard for us to do.
It is hard. It's still hard.
Yeah,
I've
totally.
never played like a real club here.
No, and I did play a bunch with. I was in a band called Snakes and Music after the Jazz June, and before I moved to London. And we would play like Knitting Factory, but like the Knitting Factory room that you didn't know existed. It wasn't the main room. It was like the second floor or whatever, on a Tuesday at 12:30 at night. And you had to like bring 20 people or they would never book you again. So yeah, it's pretty ruthless. Like unless you're well connected in that scene, then you're just playing like random places at random times and during the week.
So Jazz June initially disbanded in 2003, yes?
Yeah, sounds right.
Talk about that. When, how, what was the conversation?
You know what? To be totally honest with you, we had this practice room in, I think it was like in Sayreville, because it was between, again, Brian's in Brooklyn, I'm in New Jersey, the rest of the guys in Philly. And we were like writing what would be our last album and thinking about the future of the band. And obviously we had that big tour that just went really poorly. So that sort of like being in like the indie band in a van kind of thing, we're just like, well, we can't sell enough tickets to sort of like make that work for us. So it was like, do we go and try to do something totally different, which we kind of did with our last album. We just tried to be a bit more experimental, and I think we felt like a lot of the bands at the time, like Saves the Day and what's that other really huge band from Florida, Newfound Glory, who were getting big. We're like, well, we can't sound like them. We don't really want to. So like our sort of emo scene is going that way, where it's more like a much more melodic and much more polished sound for the radio. So we're like, let's go a bit more, we were listening to like Can and Radiohead and like, let's do stuff like that. But, you can't just switch tracks so quickly and go, we're going to go for one band. And you can, but it doesn't mean, it takes a long time to like hone a different sound.
Yep.
And I think we put out that last album, which I really like, but again, it just didn't really go over, and people were just kind of like, what are you doing? And we were just a bit confused. And, it wasn't like we sat down and said, okay, guys, the band's over. Cause we're all still like really good friends. And, to be fair, probably because money and success and all those kind of things never got involved, it was always just like a fun thing. So we just like, life got in the way basically. And again, we didn't have like a big opportunity to steal us back to it. So it's just like, we'd book a few shows and then 6 months would go by and they're like, well, no one really cares. No one's asked us to play any gigs. So, maybe we just, and then another 6 months go by, and then it's 2 years kind of thing.
I see. So it just kind of fizzled out.
Yeah, but we did play, we played 2006. We got back together and played a reunion show for our roadie Adam, who had a brain tumor, for like a benefit gig. And then we played a couple shows, but then I moved to London, around 2006, 2007. And obviously that made it much harder to play.
Yeah, talk about that. When or why did you move to London?
Well, so when I was after Kutztown, I worked at a fucking concrete company in the complaint department, which was it's the only job I can get, considering I had an English education degree but didn't want to teach. So I got this really terrible job. It would be like New Jersey construction workers, like, "Where's my fucking concrete, man? It's 30 minutes late. I got this we're on a bridge on here," and I'd just be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll send a customer representative." But so I had that terrible job, and I was like, okay, what the hell am I going to do? Like, music hasn't worked out. I've got this degree. I don't want to do anything. I tried to get a bunch of jobs at different record labels in the city. And they were like, yeah, you can work for us for free and work in a bar at night, which is obviously how you get going in that industry. But I was like, oh man, I spent all this money on like a degree. And now I feel like I could have done that without going to school. I got to do something, So at any rate, I started to go to this recording course in Manhattan called the School of Audio Engineering, SAE. Because I was like, all right, well, maybe I can get in on the sort of like production engineering side, because I was never really techie, but I did start to get like a fondness for sounds and tones and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like I could play a few instruments decent, So at any rate, went to that course. And while I was at that course, met a friend of a friend who was from the UK. She was going to an acting course a couple streets down. So we ended up meeting, hanging out, getting married, and then moving back to London to like be closer to her family.
Wow, that's a big move.
Yeah. I mean, we're not together anymore. We split up, and I've got a totally new partner and everything. But it was really super easy to come over here, because like it was pre 9/11 and also pre like 2008 economic crash. So it was it was not pre 9/11. That's totally wrong. It was pre crash. So it was like, oh yeah, I'll just get a job, whatever. Like I didn't have any prospects or anything, but it was just like, sure, I'll just go over there and I'll apply for a bunch of jobs and I'll get one. And it just didn't, I had no kids or mortgages or anything. So there was really no consequences. And I went to the embassy in New York, the British embassy in New York. And they were just like, you got $500? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you going to get a job? And I'm like, yep. And then it's like, welcome to the UK. It was just so easy, because I guess also because we were married for 2 years, it made it a lot easier, because that's kind of the deal. So yeah, it was like, okay, we'll go over. We just got an apartment for cheap and just eventually got jobs. But it was really good, because I ended up getting a job then in like the pro audio industry, which I've been in now for like 12, 15 years over here. So yeah, career-wise.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What are you doing exactly?
Well, right now I work in marketing for a company that puts on we basically rent out PA and mixing consoles and amps and all that kind of stuff for big festivals like Download and Isle of Wight, and big tours with every kind of big band, everyone from like Michael Bublé to the Idols and stuff. We rent out all the PA and live sound package and stuff. We also do all sorts of other stuff, installations and everything from boardrooms to death metal tours and stuff like that. But it's all mostly audio.
How many years were you in the UK?
I've been here for 14 years.
You're in the UK still?
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's where you are right now?
You're there right now?
Yeah.
Get out.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, it's fucking midnight, man. You're keeping me up on a Monday night.
Oh, here I am thinking you live in the Northeast somewhere. This is crazy.
I really thought you lived in Jersey. I'm so sorry, Andrew.
That's okay. I don't mind. I knew I've been preparing myself. I've been getting 10 minutes extra sleep for the last 2 weeks just to make up for tonight.
Andrew, we appreciate you staying up so late to come on our show. Now, wow. So you're still there. Do you miss the US at all? Do you ever come back?
Yeah, man, I miss it all the time. I really miss all my friends and family and stuff because, people, obviously, if you watch the news, it seems like America's just a complete shit show. Same with the UK, like politically and all the other things, especially with Trump and stuff. But I really just miss like American people and my friends. It's such like a unique, sense of humor and outlook on life that like there's great things about the UK and I love the people here just as much. But yeah, I definitely miss it. But I come over all the time because my mom's still down in Maryland. So I'll come over, hang out with her, go up to New York to see some friends, still see all the Jazz June guys in Pennsylvania and stuff. So I can keep in touch with them and meet their kids and watch them grow up and stuff like that. So before pre-pandemic, I was going back sometimes once a year, sometimes more. Because also I was working for this microphone company called Shure, who are based out in Chicago. So I'd go to Chicago and hang out there for a while and then go to New Jersey. And yeah, definitely back when the Jazz June put out our sort of like last album, I was going over all the time for shows and sometimes festivals and stuff.
Yeah, talk about when the Jazz June reunited. It was in 2014. You put out the great LP After the Earthquake. How did it happen? Talk about it.
So I think Brian was just like, look, it's been like however many years, we haven't done anything. There's this thing called the internet. We can like write songs and share them with each other, and we can like do everything we would do if we were in the same room, but from our houses. So like, let's try it out. Life's too short. Let's kind of do it kind of thing. So I was like, okay. And I had written couple songs. So I had all the equipment. So I just started sending Brian tracks and he would put a guitar on it. And then Justin had like it's funny listening to some of the recordings because it was like a electronic drum set. So there's just like crazy drum sounds that ended up being like it was just, just demo stuff. And yeah, it just ended up being like easier than we imagined it to be. And we just started like cranking out tunes. And then we got to the point where I think again, because I was visiting, again, this is pre-kids, so I was going over, had a little more flexibility. I could go over, like, see my mom for a week and then hang out with Jazz June guys, play and rehearse. And so we got to a point where we wanted to record an EP. So we had a Facebook page. Actually, yeah, and I guess I should mention also, at the same time, we were kind of like writing these songs, we had started a Facebook page and like it started to get like a couple thousand followers and people were like, hey, I never saw you guys, or I did see you guys and you should play again, or, like really love the medicine and I wish we could see you. And it's just like a lot of sort of chatter and we would post stuff online and people would be commenting. So it was like, oh, there's some, people kind of remember us kind of thing. That's sweet. And then we posted on the page saying, hey, we're about to record some songs. Does anyone know like a good recording studio? So they had recommended a place in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the guy that is in Hop Along. He's like the bassist. It's his studio. And, so when we posted that, Top Shelf was like, you guys are recording some songs. We'll put them out. And we're like, okay, I guess we got a record deal.
Nice.
So yeah, it was just really sort of cool and easy and effortless. We weren't trying really hard to get signed again, but because we had some songs and we had this like cool Facebook page with all these people kind of like cheering us on, it was like, all right, yeah, we'll go and record some songs. And hey, now we've got a person to put them out. And then Top Shelf, they'd put us on like their CMJ shows. We opened up for Braid at St. Vitus, which was like such a cool show. We played that place, Baby's All Right, which with beach slang. And then we got one of our friends from back in the day, awesome girl, Courtney. She was down in Austin and she booked us on like a show that it was like Fun Fest, but it was the night before and it was at this awesome venue in Austin and it was Into It, Over It and Mineral. And we got to play right in the middle of those two. And they like, she got like this beer company to Shiner to fly us over because it was their party. It was just like all these really cool things were just happening. We weren't like making a lot of money, but it was like all these opportunities were happening. So that was just like sort of surreal. Because then also, again, like back in the day, if we had played even Philadelphia on our own. There'd maybe be like 25 people there, and all of a sudden we could play like and maybe like 150 people would show up. So that was just really cool.
That must be incredible. Since the band breaks up, the internet and social media blows up, all these years go by, and you find all these new fans, and it's like, hey, record at the studio. And a label's like, hey, we'll put out the record. And then you're on these legendary shows. You must have been, I would have been high out of my mind. Like, wow, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah, man, I was absolutely fucking buzzing about it. It was just like, and then it'd be like, hey, like NPR is going to debut your new single. And it's just like, what is going on? Like, I think, and I'm talking about these things because I'm just as much of a fan of all these things as well, and I think there was like a whatever fourth, fifth wave of emo going on. So we just kind of got swept up along at that. And we were, we just like again, Braid was playing and some of the other band, like Mineral, got back together, and we just got lumped in with those bands. But despite the fact that at the time when Mineral and Braid was playing, they were much bigger than us. But I think it was like the sort of, and then like the younger journalists who were writing for, they didn't know that. They just thought, oh, Braid, Jazz Jude, Mineral, and so they would like review our albums and interview us we just kind of get just got swept through that kind of whole wave and got included in lots of different sort of festivals and things like that, because people just assumed like we were just as big, but we definitely weren't, at the time.
In 2016, Rolling Stone magazine said that The Medicine, your album for the Jazz June, was number 33 on the 40 greatest emo albums of all time. Now that must have felt good, right?
Yes. And I'm not discrediting this, but Jonah Bayer was part of that, and he's a huge Jazz June fan. So, I don't know if that was like a sample, if that was an accurate sample of actually, all the emo fans and they putting in their votes. It was definitely him pushing us to the fore. But yes, that was definitely an amazing thing to kind of like come across, So that was definitely cool.
I would be taking full credit for it. I would be like, they sampled an emo kid across the entire United States, and we are in. That's it.
Yes,
accept it.
One from the Midwest, one from California, one from New York City. No, I mean, again, it's incredibly sort of like proud of that sort of ranking or whatever. But yeah, it was just a really cool time, and all these things were just happening. And then, but the thing is, again, like kind of like how it started, it was like, and this is the great thing about the Jazz June and like being such good friends with those guys, is that we kind of just got to a point where like, man, we've done this and we've done that, but like, oh man, taking off another weekend's going to be rough with the kids and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it kind of just fizzles out again, because we'd get opportunities to do things and people be like, oh, I'd love to, but it's just like a bit much this month, and then after the album came out, I had my daughter Annie, and then all of a sudden my whole life changed. I wasn't able to just jump on a plane and go play a festival in Texas.
But you have a new band now, Post Skeleton, yes?
That's right. Yeah. So we started actually playing pre-pandemic. We played for about 2 years, but very infrequently. We'd have like one rehearsal every couple of months, and then we actually finally got up to the point where we had like a full set of songs. So we're like, okay, let's play some gigs. So we played 2 songs, and then the whole world shut down. And then now, we're just kind of like getting back into it. We've got our first gig actually this Thursday since, 2019 or whatever, 2020.
Oh, that's awesome. And these are, I assume, people locally in the UK.
Yeah, so one of the guys is like a good friend of my partner Jen. They've known each other from back in Manchester, and he plays bass. So yeah, we were just friends for like 5 or 6 years, and then he finally moved down to London and was like, "Let's start a band." And then he's like a professor at University of Kent. So one of his professor friends happened to be a drummer who was like. Yeah, I'd never met him before, but he lived like in London, and we're in he was kind of like he was like in with those like propaganda guys because he's Canadian. So like, yeah, so we immediately met and just had like a million references of like bands from back in the day, hardcore and punk rock and everything. So yeah, it just kind of like fit together perfectly. He unfortunately moved back to the States to get a job at Princeton University. La-ti-da. I don't know, what's more promising, a career at Princeton University or being in the post-skeleton. I mean, you make the decision, but he he made his. But yeah, no, so he got this awesome job. But now we've got a new drummer called Dom, who again is another professor. So yeah, I just kind of sit in band practice quietly as they talk about different post-colonial literature references throughout time and stuff.
What modality are you speaking in? Oh, fuck.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't get what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So basically, if you want to join the band, you've got to be a professor.
Yeah, you've got to have a PhD, and you have to be published. That's actually what we require.
And again, it's like Snapcase.
Yeah.
Like everybody has a PhD.
Yeah.
Or an MBA.
All those guys went on to get PhDs and like crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because then, it was because I was listening to the one from that guy in Drowning. Is it Drowning Man?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's like a lawyer. There's some of those guys who, where you're like in those bands have gone on to do, pretty crazy careers, which is really cool.
Well, post-skeleton, you've got new music coming out, right?
That's right. So guys at Friend Club Records, we met through this really awesome guy, Tim, who he used, I don't know if he still does or not, but I met him when the Jazz June did like our last album because he used to write for New Noise magazine. And we just kept in touch. And then he was always just like, hey, man, are you doing any new music? And when I finally had some post-skeleton songs ready, he was like, oh, I'll do some free press for you. Because he's got this awesome PR company called Sweet Cheetah, and he does it like for free. Well, basically he makes the bands like donate to charities, but he does all this work for people, like in addition to his full-time day job and having a kid. And so he's just been like championing us along for forever, like for a couple of years now. He's just like, go record, like play some gigs, to pay for the recordings, get the recordings done. I'll send them around to my friends. I know all these labels and stuff. So yeah, so he introduced us to Friend Club, and they were just like super awesome from the beginning. One of the guys used to work at Victory, and so he was aware of the Jazz June, and Rob, who runs it, just a really cool guy. And Rise does the all the artwork. We just all sort of like had a Zoom call, and it was just like, okay, we're like all on the same page. And they were just like, cool, let's do an EP in June. So we've been kind of, the recordings again were like done sort of, it's great because now with technology, we used to pay, I don't know what, $1,000 a day maybe to record at a decent recording studio. I don't know what it costs now, but we could basically record all the tracks in a rehearsal studio, because obviously I have access to like decent mics through work, but recording them, into like GarageBand through like a little interface. And then we send them to this guy, Bob Cooper, who's like a fucking wizard, man. He makes it sound like you were in like Abbey Road, like through with his sort of like studio gear and plugins and stuff. So it's really cool because it's like an affordable way to make a really professional sounding recording.
Nice. Yeah, I think the new single will be coming out the same week of this podcast. So folks, look for that. And we can hear your music on all the regular streaming services, yes?
Yeah, so we've got the song The Loudest is the first sort of single that we recorded. We actually put that out like right as the pandemic kind of hit. So that's been out for a while, but that's on Spotify and Bandcamp, and we've got an Instagram page, and I think that's it. But we're covering all the bases, and also like I promote all the stuff that we're doing through the Jazz June Facebook page too.
And it must be nice to still be involved in music because you're married now, you've got kids, you're busy. I myself have gone many years between bands, or I thought it was going to be over and I was never going to play music again. So when it happens again, or I'm putting a band together again, even if it doesn't pan out, I'm just happy to be playing. Do you feel the same way?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, especially like being locked inside for months, and then, some of the first things that actually open were like rehearsal studios. So, and pre-vaccine, you could be like, all right, I'm going to a enclosed room with two other people that I know really well. And, so we're actually able to like practice and just play and just like get out of the house and write music, which is just like absolutely life-saving for like your mental health. So, that was just super great to have that. Cause it wasn't like we're starting a band. It was like going back to playing like, hey, let's play those 8 songs we haven't played for a year. It's just been so much fun. And then again, hooking up with the Friend Club Record people who are just so super supportive and cool, and they'll help. They'll do so much. They do so much for us, like just promoting stuff and working with us and stuff. So and it's just fun to play music with your friends, drink a few beers, and hang out.
Absolutely. And how did you fare during the pandemic? Like, I would say it really changed my life a lot. This podcast really kicked off during the pandemic and became weekly, so it's kind of my focus of everything right now. I became much more online and spend all my time on YouTube and Twitch now. I barely watch movies anymore. So a lot of my life changed. How about you?
I don't know how much time you have for my answer here, but the pandemic was crazy. Like, so my dad passed away a few months into it, not from COVID, but he was like 80 and old. So that was like really challenging dealing with that, like, being obviously the state of the world, and then losing my pop, not being able to like fly over for the, to even see him when he was sick and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the only upside to it was like through that process of like grieving, and I actually was able to get some bereavement counseling free through the NHS, which is awesome because it just kind of like helps you grieve and figure out pull apart like your relationship with the person, like the good things and the bad things, and figure out what you're kind of like harboring inside of you and the way that affects you. And at the same time, we were lucky enough to have a friend of a friend who had just like taken this parent coaching course, which I didn't even know existed as a thing. But it's like when I first knew that my partner was pregnant, if someone said there's a parent coaching course, I've been like, sign me the fuck up, because I have no idea what I'm doing, So, but it was cool because like I was kind of doing the same two things. So that whole thing was like, I don't know. I don't want to bore your listeners
No, this is good stuff. Keep going.
But, the whole sort of like thing about gentle parenting. So through that, and then I got really into yoga. Like I had done it years ago because my ex-wife was actually a yoga teacher, and she taught me all the basics. But when the pandemic happened, I was like, oh, I need to do something to keep myself active. So I started doing yoga in the house. So I started reading a bunch of books about yoga, and there's this one called Be Here Now by Ram Dass. And so all at the same time, I'm kind of like doing all these things that I never had done in my 44 years. It's like really contemplating like why I made all these decisions I made, and were they the decisions that I made, or were they things that other people like sort of like influenced me? And I remember having this moment being like, have I made all the wrong choices in my life? Like if I had this information earlier, would have I made different decisions? I don't know if I have or not. I have to live with this life anyway, and it's pretty good, so I can't really complain. But yeah, it did really make me like kind of like go inside myself and figure out a lot of things that like I would always, I think like anyone who's in the creative arts or probably even into punk rock, there's probably like a bit of depression or anxiety or something driving you away from like the sort of rah of especially in America, the rah roar of the football team to like be in the sort of outskirts and stuff. And just like, why do I think that way? And also like the sort of the way that I kind of looked at myself and the opinions that I had of myself, were they things that I thought? Were they things that other people thought? So it was kind of I don't know what the word is, but like a cleansing kind of experience coming from like a really bad situation, but having that sort of like counseling available. I mean, I was lucky enough to get it for free and just be in the right place at the right time. But, I know you guys talk about like the different addictions that you guys have gone through and things like that. And I think it's really cool that you're talking about it, because I think there's probably a lot of people out there who just are in a cycle, and whether they're like, obviously, not everyone is a is a blackout drunk alcoholic, but like, you could just be sort of in a cycle of depression or a cycle of like drinking a few beers every night, or and not really knowing why, and just having like sort of bad habits and things that aren't great for your mental health. And it's like, it's good to kind of like, yeah, it's hard to pull yourself out of it if you don't realize that there's like help out there, or there's other people going through the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's really great and interesting to hear your process, because you're dealing with different stuff, but I love that you took the steps to deal with everything, and everything just kind of fell into place. And that's the thing with whatever anybody is going through, you might realize it, or you might not even realize that you're in it. I was in this cycle of hell for so long, but I was in such denial. I was just like, oh, like this is just what I do. Or so to actually ask for the help and get it is the key. And whatever that is, whatever it may be for whatever you're going through. And I don't know, for me, that was the scariest thing in the world, because I'm just so scared of other people, and I hate asking for things. I hate asking for help even now. But to be able to push through and do that and deal with whatever you're going through, I mean, I really hope everybody can, because I'm living a great life right now. It sounds like you are too, Andrew.
Yeah, and once you start to like go through some of these processes, which you might just like think is going to be the worst possible thing to like talk about, talk about like uncomfortable experiences with a stranger in a room or whatever it ends up being, because even so, there's even some like really good books. It's like, yeah, until you sort of take yourself out of those just like lanes that you're in, it's like, how would you know that there's a different way of thinking about something, because you've been taught your whole life to think about something in a certain way, and that could be putting you down like a sort of like negative path that you just don't even realize it. And once you kind of get yourself out of that mindset, you're like, it is really liberating. You just feel like a lot of freedom from some of the things that just like really may have held you back or made you depressed. Or, I mean, it's not like all of a sudden I feel like I'm never depressed anymore and anxiety is a thing of the past. Like, obviously not, but
Right.
I feel like a bit, I've come over a hill a bit, and things are a little bit better. But maybe now I'm going to write shitty music. It's going to be all happy and positive.
I keep thinking about like a parenting class, because like you said, you went to when you found out you were going to be a father, like there's so many things that I was unprepared for as a parent that
man.
I wish somebody had really kind of, I keep like, and I know this is not like the most appropriate thing, but I keep going back to that clip from The Simpsons where like Marge and Homer get in trouble for being neglectful parents. And it's like, people, milk can go sour, put it in the refrigerator, or barring that, a cool wet sack. And it's like, and Cletus like writes it down like, fuck yeah, like cool wet sack. I'm like, but I really wish someone had told me, like, when you're a parent and they're telling you like, don't shake the baby. You're like, yeah, I got that. Like, they're never really tell you like, there's going to be times where this baby is screaming in your face for 12 hours. And your first instinct as a real person is to be like, I'm going to shake the fucking shit out of this kid. I don't know what to do. I'm panicked. And it's 4:00 in the morning and I have to be at work at 6. I really wish there was someone that had sat me down and been like, this is what this is going to be like. It's going to seem insurmountable at the moment. However, the best thing you can do, and this is something that I wish someone had told me, like, I came home with twins. My wife was in intensive care for almost 3 weeks when the girls were born. And so I came home with 2 babies by myself when they were 7 days old.
Whoa.
But I really had a moment by myself where like my mom, thank God, my mother came over and she was like with me and she was like, what's the matter? I'm like, Mommy, I'm so frustrated. And she goes, take a breath. They're screaming. They're going to continue screaming. If you can hear them screaming, you're fine.
Yeah.
Take a seat. Sit down, get a glass of water, and just chill for a second. Take some deep breaths, because really, like, you don't understand that type of pressure until you're in that moment and you go, oh my God, like they tell you all that stuff, like, don't freak out, don't do this. And it's like, but in the moment, like you're so panicked and you're so like, there's all these other pressures that are going on. Like, I have to go to work. I have this, I have the other thing. And it's like, you don't know how to respond. And once you have someone that, kind of puts their hand on your shoulder and goes, it's okay. Everyone goes through this. Calm down. Take a moment. Like, it's okay to sit down. It's okay to let them cry. Like, clearing your mind in those moments is not only paramount, but it's the only thing you need to think about. There's everything else is on the back burner.
Yeah, it's just like remembering to breathe, remembering to like regulate your body. You can end up, helping the situation much more than if you're totally panicked. And the sort of parent coaching thing that we went through was, it was like, no one wants to fuck their kids up, but you just know you're just going to repeat all the bad things, when you're in a stressful situation and like, saying the things that like your stupid things your dad used to say to you or whatever. But the really cool thing about that was that it's really about like observing the motivations behind the things that you're doing. And it's like, why do you get annoyed when they whine? Or why do you, when they, like these kind of things, like why do you yell at them when they're, late or won't get out of bed or whatever it is? And you just kind of think like, well, why do I care? And it's like, oh, because my parents really wanted me to get up early every, weekend and go out and cut the lawn and all these things. It's like, but do I think that? Or is that just something that was passed down to me that I don't think? And once you start to break those things down, it's like, do I need to be yelling at them about everything? Like, obviously you have to keep them safe and not like killing themselves with it. At some points, they seem destined to just like jump off of the couch face first onto the ground and stuff. But like, aside from those things, it's like, and then once you start to like look at those things of like, okay, what is motivating me? It kind of like you kind of look at yourself and go like, why do I think this about life and money and work and jobs? It's like, do I think that, or is that what someone told me to think? And it just gives you a better perspective on like, because there's that whole other thing. I think it's like, I don't know if it's a CBT theory about like, there's the, you've got in your sort of psyche or whatever, you've got the child, the adult, and the parent, and the child is the one that's scared all the time and needs help and isn't sure. Then the adult is like the sort of one that's like criticizing you all the time. You're like, you shouldn't be doing that. Not the adult, sorry. The parent is the one that's like critical. And then the adult is like you. That's you. You're like, okay, this situation, if I take fear and criticism out of it, what decision would I make? And you're always you're always going to bounce in between those three sort of like personas, but ideally you want to be on the adult side where you're like, I'm a grown ass man. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm making this decision because I have thought about it and this is the right thing to do. And I'm not going to let anyone else tell me different because I'm going to do it this way. So yeah, it just kind of chills you the fuck out really. And like gives you confidence in the decisions you're making with your own life and with your children, because there is so much pressure from grandparents and family to be like, they're crying at the restaurant. That would I wouldn't, that wouldn't have happened on my watch. And you're like, Jesus Christ, so what am I going to do? Scream at the kid to stop crying? Is that going to help? So it gets dense.
I'm glad I'm not there yet, Andrew. I do not have any kids, and it sounds like you guys deal with a lot.
Well, the thing is, though, you can, it's all about like reparenting yourself. You know what I mean? It's even if you have kids.
Yeah, I do that now, and I have no kids.
Exactly. It's just like going back and be like, how do I wish I would have been reacted to in this situation? Right. And how should I treat myself? And you should treat yourself with respect and kindness. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's recap, gentlemen. Here's what we want to do. Number one, if you have somehow never heard the Jazz June, you should really do that. I mean, come on. Number 33 of the 40 greatest emo albums of all time. Do you dispute that, Andrew? Do you think it should be higher in the list?
No, I love 33 is perfect. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
That's like a good luck. Isn't that like a good luck number too? 33?
Yeah. Why not?
I'm just making that up. I don't know. So we want to listen to the Jazz June. We have to. We need to. We've got older stuff. We've got the newer LP after the earthquake. Do you think you guys will ever play again?
I hope so. It's hard because the other thing we found is writing an album online. Like, again, we're talking about how great it is to get into a room and play music and drink beers with your friends. But, it's less motivating to say, hey, Dan, sit in front of your computer on a weeknight with your bass and write to this electronic drum track,
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
and again, because I was going back and forth more, it made more sense. But it doesn't mean to say it can't happen. It's just a matter of like us being a bit more motivated.
And of course, we have to check out Andrew's current band, Post Skeleton. I love what you guys are doing. I checked out a lot of it recently, and there's a new single coming out, which I think will be coming out the same week of this show. So we got to listen to that, right, Andrew?
Yeah, cigs. It's not about cigarettes, but it's it's a feel good tune. So put it in your ear holes.
Andrew, we want to thank you for staying up so late over there in the UK to speak with us on the show tonight. You've created so much music that we love, that a lot of people love, and we really just want to say thank you.
So I know that Rolling Stone has said that The Medicine is number 33, but I will say They Love Those That Make the Music is without a doubt in my top 3 records of all time. It is such a great record, and there's just so many tracks on there that just mean so much to me, and it reminds me of being 15 again and skateboarding with my friends and just loving music. It encapsulates everything of my youth that I really love. And Andrew, I truly appreciate you for making that.
Yeah, thanks, man. That's really sweet. And to the listeners, you need to give these guys a 5-star review. Write a fucking write a fucking comment or whatever they ask you to do. Stop freeloading. It doesn't take a lot of time. Get on there and do it. I'll write the damn thing for you. You can copy and paste on there. These guys are doing this every single week. They've got so many cool interviews, and it's really personable. They're talking about mental health issues, addiction problems, and not just talking about, silly stuff. So support these guys. And thanks so much for having me. It's been awesome. And hopefully we can meet in person one day soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Andrew. You heard it, folks. Direct from Andrew Lowe himself. 5 stars. Thank you. There you have it, folks. Andrew Lowe. That was a wonderful conversation. We really covered it all. The Jazz June, excellent band. Post Skeleton, excellent band. Looking forward to hearing the new music. Mental health, we love talking about that. A lot of the Jazz June history that I wasn't aware of. Great stuff. Really, really personable.
I love the fact that he was in Atari. That kind of walking between two worlds of hardcore and emo and that kind of thing was
yeah, I had no idea about that.
I feel like I had an inkling of it because I remember there was a crossover between the two bands, and
yeah, we were talking about that before the show. That was a weird connection where you went to that show and your sister and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I still I can kind of put my finger on I think if they all look 19, I'd be able to pick out a handful of them. I remember what they look like, but yeah, that was a very formative moment in me becoming who I am today, of looking at skateboarding, looking at hardcore, and seeing people that were doing it and making live music and being wow, I want to be a part of this. This is a cool thing that resonates with me and makes sense. I like this enough that I want to put effort into it.
Yeah, it was really great to talk to him. So thank you again, Andrew. And folks, make sure you check out the new Post Skeleton single, Sigs. It's out there. You heard a clip of it right before Andrew's interview. You want it, you need it, you've got it. Now, Tommy, how are we doing? Sneak preview, I'm having a horrible week. But you go first.
This has been weird. I've had a hard time. I'll go into some work stuff, which I know isn't the most interesting things in the world, but I'll just let you know that as of right now, I've refused the new position that was offered to me.
Whoa. What is going on?
So they redid all of the salary scales for teachers have been redone. With the idea being that there is a teacher shortage in the United States, and they want to actively recruit people and want to recruit them based on the highest salaries. That also means you have to increase the salaries that everyone that works there. So me being one of the people that has, 13 plus years of experience, I'm at the upper echelon in terms of pay scale. Therefore, it actually behooves me to be a teacher instead of taking this new job. They've said they're going to come back with a new offer. However, this new offer involves me losing my vacation with my children. So I'm going to go ahead right now and say, I'm not taking it unless you say I can go down the shore with my kids. So
Ooh, I love the hard bargaining that is going on here. This is great.
I say this in that I have spoken to people who are, I work with a woman who is an economist for a number of years, and her words were, they need you much more than you need them. And I was like,
wow.
Okay. And she's like, so you are the person with leverage. Make sure you use it. However, don't over leverage this and end up like screwing yourself. She goes, however, you're screwing yourself into a very lucrative position either way. She's like,
even if you lose, you win.
Precisely. But just me personally, that weighs really heavy on me. Like this hurts me in a weird way. Like I don't sleep as well at night. I think about it constantly. I drive to work in the morning and have conversations with myself, out loud that I normally wouldn't have, where I'm normally just like, let me put on Spotify and listen to some Jazz June. And I don't. And I think that peace of mind is kind of gone for the time being. And that kind of breaks my heart. But on the positive, the girls have finished a 1,000-piece Lego puzzle. And we're fucking psyched about it. And we bought some Mod. It's called Mod Podge. It's like the clear glue you can put on top. Evie is in the midst of putting the second coat on upstairs, which is great because I'm glad I'm downstairs in the basement. It smells like death. And I'm so excited because they're excited about just everything. And when I said, they overheard their mom and I, Kelly and I were talking about the beach, and they were just like, oh my gosh, that's right. And they keep a calendar in their room of how long it is to the beach, which also this new position would mean I can't go to the beach with them for 2 weeks. So I got a real, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing going on right now.
So the hurt that you described when you're driving to work, is that personal disappointment because you thought you were getting this big new position and now you are giving it up in service of your family, among other things?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of it comes down to, I have anxiety a lot about the conversations because in my head, I'm perfect. Like in my head, I can argue this out very, very clearly, but it's like the arguments you have in the shower with someone you had, someone you had an argument 10 years ago with, and you play it out while you're washing your hair. Well, if I had hair, I'd wash it, but while you're shaving your head, I get anxious about that. And it affects a lot of parts of my life that I don't like it to affect, because I like that homeostasis. Like I like that stability, and this is bringing instability, and I don't like it. So yeah, I to answer your original question, I think a lot of this comes down to, it's not just not having that position, it's the anxiety around the conversations around that position.
Yeah, and I get it. I totally get it. If there's any disruption to my work life, I am in complete disarray, and it can affect the vibe. It can affect the overall vibe at work. If they're like, hey, we're going out of our way to get this position for you. And if you're like, oh, I don't want it, you read these stories all the time. Wait, this is probably going to make you more.
No, go. Because it really is. This is what I've been thinking, is that they're going to go with another candidate.
Yeah.
That person's going to be successful, and I'm going to be pissed the whole time they're successful.
Yeah. Like something like that. Or it's like, oh, you take this position or you're out of here. It's like you hear about that in the corporate world, which I don't think will happen to you. But
I will say this right now. The bonus to be a math teacher at my school used to be about $3,000, like the sign-on bonus. It is now $7,000. They have more than doubled it. So I'm not worried about that because I know that there is a scarcity issue. Like they can't find the people. So I'm not worried about that. However, I am worried about the in talk, like the people, like the whispering, like that really bugs me. And I know that like you deal with that corporate world. Like, how do you deal with that? Like as someone that works in the corporate world?
I'm completely disengaged.
So how do you ignore it? Like
let me back up. I'm not completely disengaged. That's not totally true. I'm not involved in too much because I guess I just don't care that much about work. You know, like my department is really supportive of me, and everything is usually very corporate. You know, do this, okay. Follow up on this, okay. So there's not much gossip. I'm not involved in a lot of personal conversations and gossip. There was one really weird situation where a former boss of mine called me up very inappropriately and said, like, you know, you messed this up and the VP of sales and this person are talking about it and it makes you look bad. So I'm just telling you. And that really pissed me off. Number one, because that was a completely inappropriate phone call from someone I don't even report to. And number two, well, I guess that's it. Just, you know, there's no number two. It just doesn't happen that often.
I think that's one of the huge benefits of working remotely is that you are not involved in the day-to-day like water cooler type shit.
Not at all. Yeah. So Tommy is not taking the job. That's big news. Tommy, I'm sure you're going to do just fine though. And then you get to go on your vacation at least, right?
As of right now,
it's important to the kids.
As of right now, I'm 100% going. However, if they throw a boatload of money at me, we might be having a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if they come back with an incredible offer, you got to go with that. Now, go ahead, ask.
How are you doing?
Me? Well, not good.
Yeah.
Not good. I messed up something at work. I priced something wrong, and we have to take the hit for it. And I am in a complete tailspin over it, and I do not like messing up, especially at work, because now I'm paranoid that I will be fired and all this stuff, and the microscope will be on us. So I need to be really careful moving forward.
How does that make you feel? Like, let's just put it this way. How is it affecting you?
Yeah, like I just described. I'm like, oh man, everyone hates me now. I'm paranoid. I'm going to get fired. That's where my head goes.
Okay. My thing is like, it always goes to sleep. Like if I'm not sleeping well, I'm not doing well.
Oh, I'll sleep fine, but I'll just be a mess all day. Yeah, so it's I'm sure it will be fine, and I just need to be really careful moving forward. Yeah, so that's about it. So with our remaining few minutes, we have a couple new reviews. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
Folks, keep the reviews coming. We need them. We need Apple Podcast reviews, and we need Spotify reviews. So here is our first review from Solid Ecans. 5 stars. Tommy is the pit shitter. I know it for a fact. I only listen to every episode in hopes of a slip-up on his part so I can pin it on him. And of course, Solid Ecans is talking about the turnstile mosh pit crap incident, and he is claiming boldly that Tommy is the pit shitter. Your comments, Tommy?
1, I have never seen Turnstile. 2, Keith screenshotted this to me, and I have been howling by myself. Like, whenever I'm having like a moment at work where like stuff's not really good, I will literally pull up that and cackle like by myself. People have asked me like, "What are you laughing about?" And in my head, I'm going, I could explain this to him, but it's going to take so long to explain why I'm laughing so hard. And then I'll have to explain what the podcast is and who Turnstile is. I'm like, nope, never mind. Not happening. Like, it really make me laugh in terms of like that someone has taken this so far and to put that on Spotify. So I'm very happy about it.
There you go. And we've got one more review from K19148. New scene, 5 stars. Great show with great hosts. Very engaging content, even when I don't know the artists being interviewed. I love that. because in my mind, Tommy, I am so good at interviewing people that people want to hear it even if they don't know the band. What do you think of that?
I think it's accurate. Because
I mean, I hope.
Yeah, no, I think there's been bands on that I have not been super familiar with and like listened to them before and been like, okay, good music, not exactly my cup of tea, not something I would go to, but I love what they're doing and I love the fact that they're coming in to talk about it. But the fact that it keeps people engaged that's the huge part of this, is like exposing people to music that they may potentially have never heard. And again, it comes back to the idea of that we really want to make sure people understand that this is a community and we are part of something bigger. We love what we do. We love this and we love exposing new music. We love talking to people that have made great music and we love talking about the process. So I'm glad someone said that.
There you go. And that's a great way to end it. Folks, we're out of time. We're back next week with a new episode and a new guest. So thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.